So the consensus has been for the entire offseason that we've got three teams in the Big Ten, none in the West, all in the East. And after 4 weeks of play, what do we have? We have a team that snuck by a major non-conference foe in the final second. That was a thrilling win. But what did it really prove in terms of dominant play down the road? And for another, we had dominant play against a team that is a respected conference foe, but a little lacking in offense, possibly. And then we've got a third who generally has yet to play anyone and came up against its stiffest test, gave up a big play early, and then methodically drove home to a typical, stereotypical, classic Michigan win. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. This is our Big Ten live show that we present to you each and every Monday, 6 o'clock Eastern time. Appreciate you all jumping on board. Leave those comments, questions there in the live chat. Please consider the super chat. Also, you can contribute to the Voice of College Football at Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Also, the most effective way to do so, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App at MarkRogersTV. Catch our predictions, patreon.com/MarkRogersTV. And then you can also catch our predictions and the Discord as well on our YouTube membership. So we've made it simple and easy. We don't want anyone to be in conflict and trying to determine, do I get a YouTube membership or do I get a Patreon membership? They are exactly the same. So you jump on Patreon, it's patreon.com/MarkRogersTV, or right here on YouTube. You're right here, get a YouTube membership. You get the Discord link. You can talk college football 24/7, 365 with the knuckleheads. And then you can also get my predictions, 15-5 against the spread. We will add up the numbers. I believe 51-32 against the spread. That will do you pretty well, but I can't compare to one Steve Merrill, our guy from Wager Talk, who delivers his under-the-radar pick each and every week, exclusive for the Voice of College Football. Steve Merrill from Wager Talk. Since week 1 of 2022, he's 16-1 against the spread. All right, we appreciate y'all being here. Let's start with some Michigan football talk. We've got Nelson Hubble jumping on the line from Maize and Blue Review. Nelson, what's going on tonight? Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me, Mark. A lot to talk about, I'd say, in the Big Ten. You know, it seemed like this week coming into it might be a little static, but I think we learned something about the top three teams like you were talking about just moments ago.
We do. We continue to learn about everybody in the country, and it's just each week is a data point, and some data points are much more valuable, more important than others, but there tends to be the response from college football fans, and I totally get it. Every time there's a win, whether it's a big win, close win, whatever, it's like, well, then how good is that team? Yeah. So Michigan, of course, marches through 3 non-conference opponents. Nobody's going to make the argument that these 3 teams are any good. However, Michigan was largely dominant, didn't blow them off the field in regards to a score, a big point total like they did the 3 teams they played last year, but they controlled the game. They put up the points early, except for against Bowling Green, of course, but the first 2 opponents, big points early, cruised home for the win. Now Rutgers shows up, and the games have been fairly interesting the last 2 years in that Rutgers took Michigan to a 1-score game in the Big House 2 years ago, and they led at halftime before Michigan really put the foot to the gas and blew by Rutgers. This was a game where Rutgers hung around. They put up the one big play. They, as recently as or as late in the game as late third quarter, they had that drive going. It was 17-7. They had a 4th and 2. They had hit a couple big pass plays, and Rutgers was actually showing some semblance of a passing offense. And then Mike Sanders still makes the huge play on 4th and 2, and that sealed it, and that was that.
Yeah, well, number one, great play by Sanders. Still, it seemed like nobody realized he had the interception on the field or, you know, up in the booth until he sort of broke out of the pack, started running with it. And that was, you're right, that was sort of the turning point of the game. I would say the turning point really was the second quarter because Michigan dominated most of the way. But then Rutgers came out with that drive there in the third quarter and made Michigan fans step back and say, hey, like if they score here, this suddenly becomes a different conversation than the general feeling of how that game had been up to that point. Because to your point, Rutgers did have that big play early on, right off the bat, that big touchdown. And missed tackle by Rod Moore there, who was playing some of his first snaps of the season. He should be, the expectation before his injury was that he was going to be one of the top safeties in the country. He comes out, hasn't gotten a lot of live action against, anyone other than his team. And he misses a tackle, and it happens, so there's no big deal there. But the Rutgers game was exactly what I sort of expected it to be. I predicted a 31-10 game. I thought Rutgers would hang around a little bit. I missed on by 3 points there, which, hey, they missed a field goal. Nelson. Michigan missed a field goal, but that was pretty good. I'll give myself some credit there. Yeah. So,
you were on it. No question.
They didn't surprise me. I love Greg Schiano's style of coaching. It's an old fashioned grittiness that really fits the Big Ten. And so, I thought they would be pretty sound on both sides of the ball, especially with Wimsatt getting some more experience and now having, coming into his junior year, as I think he's just a 19-year-old still, as an early enrollee, and he graduated a year early and then, went to Rutgers halfway through his high school career. It was a whole weird situation a couple years ago when he first got there, but nonetheless, I expected him to play better, and he did than last year, much better. That pick six, you're forcing something on fourth down, so, sort of unfortunate for them, but offensively, they just didn't have the firepower to hang with the defense that right now is the number one scoring defense in the country. And Rutgers, I think they proved themselves to some degree. Defensively, I think they impressed early, and still giving up only 30 points, not that bad. 24 points offense, not bad. But Michigan, now, if you look at it, the other side of things, they had 7 possessions. They scored on 5 of them. One of them was a missed field goal, and one of them was just an empty drive. So, that's pretty impressive as well, to look at it that way. And Harbaugh talked about it today in his presser. He said, we need to approach these games more about how many possessions we have versus, just going out there and playing, right? So Michigan has been a ball-dominant team, possession-dominant team, run the ball, play good defense lately. But more than ever, that's important for a team that now is trying to open up passing the ball. So I don't think we'll see a ton of evolution offensively from Michigan against some of those opponents like Rutgers, maybe like Penn State, who I think it's going to be sort of button heads, smashing mouth, running the ball. But, who's to say? Michigan still has a long way to go to get to that point that they want to be able to contend for a national championship on offense, at least.
So in addition to Rod Moore getting that brief playing time, then we saw him on the sideline. How much did he play past that?
Spot minutes, not much.
Okay. Yeah,
you saw him out there a little bit here and there, but really did not play much. We saw Quentin Johnson play a little bit more of that nickel. Keon Sabb was out there at safety along with Makari Page. And, once you get your lead there, especially with that St. Ursula interception, you feel comfortable going further down on the depth chart as well.
So then also returning to the lineup and still nursing an injury would be Will Johnson. What would be your thoughts about how he came back?
He looked pretty much 100% for the most part. My guess is he won't get the lion's share of the snaps until maybe Minnesota. It's hard to say, but I think he's not fully back, but as close as you can get to being there. He played almost all of that game. So, Johnson will be ready, I expect, for any stiffer throwing competition or passing competition down the line here on the schedule.
We've got Nelson Hubble on the line. You can join his work there at Maize and Blue Review. So get on over there, check out Nelson's work. Anything in particular, Nelson, that you're working on?
Well, so, weekly I do a Big Ten Power Rankings that comes out every Thursday. I have a segment I call Look Around the Big Ten where, Monday mornings I post just kind of a review of what we saw this weekend. I go into 3 or 4 players who impressed me and 3 or 4 players who disappointed me, and sometimes it can be pretty scathing. So it's interesting. I love it. It's probably my favorite piece to write, and then that'll accompany with a video that I usually put out in the evening. So after I jump off here, I'm actually going to record that. It should be up here about 8 o'clock tonight. And it's about 15 minutes, so it's not too much of your time. And then I do a daily segment called Nelson's Nuggets for Michigan Rivals at Maize and Blue Review. And that's on all of our platforms, anywhere you can find it. And that's just a minute of me talking about whatever the hottest topic is. Today, I talked about a few players from Michigan State that I thought Michigan could go after in the portal. Once Mel Tucker's firing becomes finalized, I thought that would be an interesting thing to talk about. So that was today's, but it's different every day.
Any Big Ten fan or college football fan, even in general, I would think would be intrigued by Nelson's thoughts in particular, all that stuff, certainly, but in particular, that last item about who could Michigan possibly pick off from Michigan State. Interesting. When you do the power rankings, let me ask you this. What is your approach to power rankings? Number one. Number two, I'm not going to ask you to reveal your power rankings for this week because that comes out later in the week, right?
Yep.
Number one. And number two, we want folks to join you on Maize and Blue Review. But what were your power rankings, whether that be the top 3 or 4 going into last weekend, or maybe some surprises down the rankings?
Yeah, so I battled with those top 3. I really did, because I was pretty down on Michigan after that Bowling Green game. I was, I knew they were going to bounce back. I knew that, that wasn't going to be a sign of things to come for JJ McCarthy. But I still feel like Penn State's proved themselves. And it was hard for me to put them ahead of Michigan. So I relinquished that. I said, I'm going to hold off one more week here. I'm going to see what they show me, what Ohio State shows me here. They both got big games. And honestly, I think Penn State's going to be my number 1 team. I will reveal that. And, we'll see where the rest fall coming on Thursday. But yeah, that was the toughest decision. Down the line, it's been such a shuffle. The Big Ten West is such a mess. And Wisconsin, I think, is going to be the one to emerge at this point. Iowa just can't trust them on offense at all, at all. I think they put up 76 yards of total offense, 91 yards of offense on the game, including kick returns. So just think about that. That's awful. That's about as bad as it gets. You didn't go the length of the field once. So yeah, Iowa has the potential, I think, but that team I have sitting in the middle of the pack. And the basement is pretty much the same. Nebraska's intriguing me as a team that's sort of climbing with Heinrich Haarberg at quarterback. He looks pretty good, especially on the ground. Not a great passer so far, not as polished, but he's a young guy. And Jeff Sims, he's banged up or, whatever's going on there. And I don't think he's particularly good. Unfortunately, I really had high hopes for him coming into the season. But so, things are interesting, and it's still very fluid in the middle. But Maryland right now is my number 4, and that's going to stay the same. I feel pretty good about that because the rest of the Big Ten looks pretty rough to me.
Yeah, you mentioned the Nebraska quarterback situation, and of course, that is Michigan's next foe in the Big Ten is going out to Nebraska to take on the Huskers. They went there 2 years ago, and they had quite a showdown for a Nebraska team that was a typical Scott Frost team that lost every game by 1 score, but put up a huge fight against Michigan. 32-29, I believe, was the final score. 1 year later here at the Big House, of course, though Michigan disposed of Nebraska very easily. That was after Casey Thompson got hurt 34-3. So now we've got Michigan again going out to Lincoln. And as you alluded to, Jeff Sims would seem to be the quarterback who has a higher ceiling. Heinrich Haarberg has been with the Nebraska program for a long time and has never really been considered in the running for the starting job. However, through a couple games played, he gives you just about as much threat on the ground as Sims. Plus, it seems like even though he doesn't have high-end arm talent, like he's going to take care of the ball and seems to be the choice to try to navigate Nebraska to what I would guess most fans, reasonable fans, would want, and that's to get them to a bowl game.
Yeah, I mean, that I would agree. Reasonable fans, that's probably your best. That's the top end goal for Nebraska this season. Playing Michigan now is it's going to be tough, and this weekend I don't think Nebraska is going to put up much of a fight, to be honest. But the ground game's interesting there. So Michigan's run defense has been pretty good, but Mason Graham at defensive tackle's hurt. So, and the way it was described is that he, according to Harbaugh after the game, that he might be out another week. And so now you have Kenneth Grant in there, who is an electric player if you can have one at defensive tackle. He's quick, he's big, he's strong. if you look at that Mike Sainristil pick 6, you'll see number 78 as his lead blocker, and he falls behind him, but he's the next closest guy to Sainristil on that play. So they have some guys up front, but Harburg, presents an interesting and a very different challenge as a runner that Michigan doesn't see. Michigan's done pretty well against quarterbacks that scramble, whether it's from a passing play, but design run game has been a component they don't see a ton. And Army, just a couple of years ago now, I'm trying to remember, was that 2019 maybe? This was a different defensive coordinator, but different style. But Army's given Michigan troubles. They've gotten troubles in recent years from guys like Casey Thompson before he got hurt. He, started the game pretty well. They went down, I think, kicked a field goal, and then that's all that she wrote for Nebraska. But so Harburg, I agree with the protects the ball better. Sometimes just not turning over is the least or the most you can ask for a guy in his situation. If you look at Wimsatt, had he not had that interception, I'd say he played pretty well for what you're going up against, and and for his talent level and what he presents. And Harburg should offer something different. So even if his completion percentage isn't very high, which it isn't, it's pretty low. It might not even be at 50 this season. I'm not sure, but it's right around there. He hasn't thrown a pick, so that's the key there. Not turning it over and running the ball is a recipe for victory to steal a game against a team that's a little more talented than you. Run the ball, play some defense.
Before Michigan takes the trip to Happy Valley, I am looking at this offense as being the best that Michigan will face up to that point, which I believe is game 10. Purdue. Purdue, I think, has the best offense of any team on Michigan's schedule before Penn State.
I agree, and that's ridiculous, right? Like, that's crazy. Hudson Card, he's still probably somehow a top 5 quarterback in the Big Ten. He's probably at number 5, which is absolutely ridiculous if you think about it. After a 2-interception game this weekend, but yeah, I agree. They got Devin Mockabee, who's a very good running back. I like him. Now, you're buried behind guys, some of the best backs in the country in the Big Ten as it relates to who's going to get some recognition. But I think Mockabee is a good runner. He's a hard runner, and Hudson Card can sling the ball around. He's not afraid to, and they're going to need to. So it is kind of crazy to see that. Michigan's not going to play anyone particularly threatening until that game on offense. But hey, better to get the test before you play Penn State, I guess, than at Penn State.
And of course, nobody's going to be crying for Jim Harbaugh in any such way, but I'm sure that he would rather have Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State spaced out instead of bam, all of a sudden, boom, 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 3 in a row. And if Maryland jumps out and that game is on the road and becomes a bigger test than some would anticipate, then it could be 3 difficult games in a row. But long ways to that point. Nelson, we appreciate you being here. It's, again, Nelson Hubble. He's at Maize and Blue Review, and so check out his work. He's got a lot of great stuff going on there. Nelson, we appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you for having me, Mark. I'll see you around.
So again, Michigan's got a date with Nebraska coming up in Lincoln as their second Big Ten game, coming in at 4-0. They made quick work of the Huskers last year, and I have not seen the point spread for that game, but it should be something similar, you would think, this year as well. Let's talk some Penn State football. We got Marty Leap on the line from Penn State Rivals. Marty, what's going on tonight?
Not too much, Mark. How about yourself?
Not too much. Appreciate you stopping by. Okay, well, I don't know. After that performance by the defense, I don't care what the weather was. I don't care anything. There's just no way to overstate, just like there would be no way to understate Iowa's offensive performance. There's no way to overstate what Penn State did, because for as bad as Iowa is offensively, I'm pretty sure they're going to score points in the rest of their games, and they're going to be able to mount more than 76 yards of total offense. So what Penn State did, we talked about with you. We knew it was possible that we could see something like this, but we just kind of gave Iowa a lot of credit because they usually are pretty resilient in these kind of games and muster up enough fundamentals and technique and defensive play to hang in, but not against that team on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a combination of things. First off, like you said, Iowa's offense is what it is. And they're an offense that's always going to struggle. They turn the ball over 4 times. That's going to make it even worse. And like you said, regardless of the elements, regardless of the conditions they played in, this Penn State defense, we were doing our post-game show for Penn State Rivals, and I'd said on there that this is the best Penn State defense I have ever seen in my lifetime. And that's saying something, because I've seen some good ones, but they're fast, they're physical. They, in my opinion, may have the best secondary in the country. Their defensive end room might be the best in the country. It was on full display Saturday night. And then you throw that in, like we talked about last week, there was definitely a personal touch there. After the game, James Franklin did not hide. These players did not hide how they felt about Iowa and about Iowa's coaches after that game in 2021. So I think it was, you throw in the old don't poke the bear kind of thing, and they poked the bear, and the bear came roaring back big time on Saturday night. So it was just kind of the perfect storm of things. But yeah, this defense is really good. And, the offense is been fine. It's got some steps to take yet, but this defense, without a doubt, in my opinion, is good enough to play for a college football championship and play in the college football playoff.
Yeah, poor Iowa. They could get nothing started. If you're a stats nerd, you'd like to look at strange box scores, just look at the box score. And if you're used to looking at stats in football, then you don't see these kind of stats very often. A couple times a season over the entire country, 4 first downs, 76 yards of total offense. I don't know what the rushing figures were. They had to be minuscule because Iowa hit for a big play, like the first or second play, they hit for a decent play down the middle.
Yeah, I think it was third play of the game, because it was a third down and like 6 or 7. They hit Eric All for a gain of 20. And then on the next third down, McNamara rolled out and scrambled for 18 yards. After those 2 plays, so after the McNamara scramble, they had something like 17 yards of offense the rest of the game. You said you weren't sure on the rushing totals. They finished the game with 20 yards rushing and averaged 1.1 yard per carry, which is just that's unbelievable for any team. But it's, again, Iowa, say what you want about their offense, but you kind of bank on Iowa having a physical offensive line and good backs that are going to at least be able to run the ball with some kind of success, and they could not run it at all on Saturday night.
Well, let's turn to the other side of the ball, because the defense kind of overshadows anything that could have possibly happened on the offensive side. So when you arrive at 31 points and the defense is that dominant, it's not necessarily a stellar offensive showing. And then you start to coach the game differently, and that makes total sense, of course, once you determine, okay, they're doing nothing on offense and we're up 10 or 17, then it just kind of changes, as opposed to, okay, we're doing what we're doing, but it's 17 all. It's a different game. So your thoughts about what the offense did on this night?
I thought to me, my biggest complaint about the offense was I thought they started slow. I didn't think early on Mike Yurcich was having his best game, offense coordinator for those who don't know. But once this offense kind of got into gear, they scored in the second quarter to make it 10-0, came out and scored a touchdown on, I believe, 3 of their first 4 possessions of the second half. And then at that point, it was 31-0. The rain was really starting to come down, and they did kind of change their approach. But my biggest complaint with the offense would have been, I thought early on, Yurcich was almost being a little too conservative with the play calling. And now some of that, hey, you're at home against the team that you feel confident is not going to score much at all, if at all, on you. The weather was already poor. I can get it. But yeah, I think the offense left some points on the field without a doubt. They missed a field goal, had a field goal blocked. So that's still a bit of a concern. There were some drops by the receivers. I know you and I talked last week that the drops were a bit of a problem against Illinois. And you don't want to completely chalk it up to this, but when it's raining like that, you can't totally fault the receivers for dropping every ball they drop. So I definitely think this was one, like you said, you're always going to coach it a little bit differently too when you get that big lead and you know you've got a team pretty much dead like they did. But yeah, I still think there's more untapped potential there with this offense. And I do think too, some of it is through 4 weeks, they haven't really had to go too deep in the bag to win these games. You know, they've been substantially better than every team they've played. Their smallest margin of victory was 17 against Illinois in a game that really wasn't that close. So I do think that there's definitely more there. That at this point you've got Northwestern, a bye week, in UMass. Whatever's there in terms of this vertical passing attack and things you haven't gone to yet, you feel pretty comfortable you can save until you go to Columbus next month. So I think that's something too, where I don't think we're going to really see them truly try and unleash Drew Allar in this passing game until they go to Columbus to play the Buckeyes in a couple of weeks. Because again, you've got Northwestern, a bye week, in UMass. You're going to be 6-0 when you go to Columbus.
Marty Leap stopping by from Penn State Rivals. Join him right there. You see the Twitter handle, and again, the handle to Penn State Rivals. The Nittany Lions coming off a 31-0 over Iowa, 4-0. And yes, Northwestern's coming up this week. And of course, the Wildcats, hey, give them some credit. They were down 21. I don't know that I expected Northwestern to score 21 points against Minnesota, let alone score 21 straight and defeat what's been a decent team from year to year. Maybe not this year, but Northwestern's got a little bit of juice going. And that is a noon game at Northwestern, noon Eastern time game. So the only other thing that's stands out from the box score and watching the game, I was watching two games at the same time, and then obviously at some point kind of lose interest of 31-0 or 24-0, 17. When it's 17-0 and Penn State's the defense and Iowa's the offense, it pretty much at that point knew the game was over. But Katron Allen and Nick Singleton being in that 3 yard per average. Again, let's account for the defense. They don't get run on very often, so that's part of it. But maybe that being a key point to emphasize during the bye week.
Yeah, I agree. You know, we talked about this in our show, and I said I wouldn't call it a concern yet, but it's definitely something of like, hey, we've got a couple weeks here until we play Ohio State and then Michigan a few weeks later. We need to get this figured out. I do wonder, though, watching Nick Singleton, it has seemed to me at times there's been holes. There's been the ability for him to bounce it and get big gains, and he hasn't. So I wonder if they've almost tried to overcorrect where last year he tried to bounce so much instead of just kind of being that true in between the tackles runner. So I almost wonder if that's something they see and they kind of go back on it and tell him like, hey, Nick, what makes you great is that ability to get the edge, run past the defense and go, and try to go back to that some more. But yeah, ultimately, if you're still averaging 3.5, 4 yards per carry, which they have, you're going to take that because that's going to be a first down every series as long as you can do that. So I agree the running game could definitely improve, and I think it's something they'll look to try and get hammered out. I also know they have some interior offensive linemen who are banged up right now. So, you know, in theory, Northwestern bye week UMass should be a good opportunity for those guys to really have a light workload and get healthy, and that will probably help too. But, yeah, I agree with you that if there's one thing on this offense, you really want to receiver drops aside because, as I've said before, they're executing everything perfectly on those plays. You just got to catch the football. If there's one thing on this offense you really want to see get cleaned up, it's trying to get a little more explosiveness to that running attack, because that's what made this rushing game so potent last year. Was Singleton, I think, had something like 7 or 8 carries of 50-plus yards, which I believe was a Big Ten freshman record. And even Katron Allen, even though he's not as explosive, still would regularly, you know, probably once or twice a game, rip off a 20-plus yarder. So you want to try and get back to that. I'm sure they will spend the next 3 weeks trying to get that figured out. But, yeah, still, if you're averaging 3.5 to 4 yards per carry, you're going to be happy with your rushing attack.
All right, Marty. Appreciate you stopping by. Everybody check out Marty's work, Penn State Rivals. And again, you see the Twitter handle on the screen. Okay, Marty, thanks so much. I'm sure we'll be talking down the line.
Absolutely, Mark. I'm sure we'll talk soon.
All right. Yeah, we've heard from Penn State. We've heard from Michigan, 2 of the big players, of course, in the Big Ten. We will not, folks, ignore the West. Not at all. We love the Big Ten Western Division, especially in this final season of division play, or possibly final season. We thought it was the final season of division play, and that was before Washington and Oregon were added. So now we may have another format of divisions we shall see. Check out the videos that I posted with my suggestions on how the Big Ten should be divided with 18. I've got my rankings that just came out, so it may not have been the best in terms of programming and scheduling and timing, but just with the uploading, downloading, and everything that needed to be done and all the graphics, we just released our conference rankings just minutes before we came live here with all of you. So we've got our Power 5 conference rankings. Maybe I'll rank the group of 5 conferences and put them all together. But for right now, it's a Power 5 conference rankings. Check that video out. And our top 25 that actually makes sense, which was released. And so I'm going on record right now, although I will not guarantee it, that we will attempt to release the top 25 that actually makes sense going forward Sunday morning, because it's been much more impactful, I will say. Many more people take it in when it's released early on Sunday. We've run into some just personal things that needed to be taken care of the last 2 weeks. Therefore, I didn't get it out until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night on Sunday, but we will deliver the top 25 that actually makes sense on Sunday morning to brighten up your Sunday morning after a big day of college football on Saturday. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Michael's on the line. Hello, Michael.
There we go. Sorry, I was muted. How you doing tonight, sir?
I am doing just fine. What's going on, sir?
Not much. One thing, it does not matter when you release the top 25 that actually makes sense. It can be a 12:01 Sunday morning, or it can be at 11:59 Sunday night. Everybody's going to wait all day for it. And it's your personal issues that can come last. Your personal issues is always first.
Well, I do appreciate that. We just had, nothing going wrong, just things to deal with and take care of. And so I could not get to it. But the way things look in coming weeks, we probably won't sleep Saturday night. We'll just stay up. We'll work on the top 25 that actually makes sense. Get that out. Then maybe get an hour or 2 of sleep before Sunday morning hits early. That's
true.
What we're looking at. Yes.
I know you do conferences and stuff like that, but if I'm you and stuff like that, I would have right now, I have Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State slightly ahead of Maryland, but that's just me. But would you have Purdue 11th or 12th in the conference rankings right now?
Well, you will find out very soon.
If I can find out tonight. If not, I'll have to wait till tomorrow.
Well, no, I don't have the listing in front of me, but I have taken my notes to rank the Big Ten, the power rankings in the Big Ten. I just haven't cut the video.
Yeah, and I don't know. You said you've seen first time you've seen Purdue was what, the Syracuse game or the Wisconsin game?
I can't even say that I really watched the Fresno State game because I had it on my phone while I was watching 2 other games. So
Wisconsin
I didn't really
or Syracuse.
Wisconsin.
All right. To me and stuff like that, I don't know what it is with Wisconsin and stuff like that, but it seems like every time Purdue gets off to a slow start, it's curtains against for Wisconsin and with Syracuse and stuff like that. But what is it? It seems like Purdue, is the offense, in your opinion, a decent offense, or do you think they're like a mediocre offense?
I think that if Purdue would take care of the football better, which surprises me to a certain extent because Hudson Card was not a turnover machine at Texas, but if they took care of the ball better, they would have a top half of the Big Ten offense.
Mm-hmm. And the defense, I kind of got to rate them like around the lower half of because that's the weakness, I think, especially the secondary. Because I think the front seven is doing a good job. It's just the secondary, or did Purdue's mostly young on defense, in your opinion, and it's the first year staff, and you got to take that into consideration.
I'm trying to think of how many defenses in the Big Ten are worse than Purdue's.
Maybe Northwestern IU, who had to go to 4 overtimes on Saturday against Akron.
I guess, but IU only gave up 21 to Louisville. They kept Ohio State in check, although Ohio State was kind of a different team in week 1. Yeah, it's almost like the power rankings. I will tell you this about the power rankings. After about team 6 or 7, all the way through to the bottom, the next 7 are all that close to each other.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
now.
Do you still think Purdue can manage out a 5-win season? Or
Now
maybe a
you're looking
6-win
at 5
season?
wins.
Yeah.
That's your best hope.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, I can still think maybe 6, but I think they would have to shock the world at some point. Because I know they got Illinois, they got Iowa, which is that a winnable game for Purdue next week up at Kinnick?
Yes.
All right, then you got Nebraska, Minnesota, and IU in Northwest. Well, I guess you can do it, but it seems to be like the offense just bogs down and stuff.
You don't want to get to a bowl game?
No, I want to get to a bowl game, but it's just I don't know if they can get it done or not this year, though.
Well, let's get you to a bowl game. Let's see, 1-3 as things stand right now, and you got to consider that they've played 3 of the better teams on their schedule already, to a certain extent. Okay, Illinois at home. To get to a bowl game, you almost have to win that game.
Yeah.
Iowa is going to be a substantial, decent-sized favorite, but you could win at Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State, I would normally say forget it, but you know what that series has looked like for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
The Ohio State's had more trouble with Purdue than practically any team in the conference.
Yeah.
At Nebraska, that's winnable.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota, look at Minnesota over the weekend against Northwestern. And then Northwestern and Indiana, there's a lot of winnable games there.
Mm-hmm. And the thing I was trying to figure out, if you was looking up, Michigan's favored by 19.5 Saturday against Nebraska.
Okay, thank you.
And one thing I was just trying to figure out, and maybe it's just not me, but why is it more teams this year are leaving points on the field instead of taking the points?
Because more and more coaches are adhering to the analytics, and the analytics typically tell you to go for it.
Okay. But like you said, like with the Purdue-Fresno State game and stuff like that, the Purdue-Syracuse game, they left points on the field, not saying that they would have been able to. Most likely they could have probably beat Fresno State, Syracuse. No, because that took Purdue football back like 20 years, back to when Hazel was, or actually 10 years when Hazel was there, but I digress. But I can see like 3 or 4 different times in the Fresno State game, Purdue had opportunity to get points, and they went for it instead of kicking field goals. And if you kick 3 field goals in that game, you beat Fresno State, and you're 2-2 right now.
Well, think of it this way, Michael, and I'm going to throw out some rough math. Let's say you're at the 25-yard line. You're just at the fringe of the red zone, and you've got a 4th and, 2, 3, something like that?
Yeah.
Your chances of converting that probably are 70%.
Okay.
And then your chances of scoring a touchdown are probably 40 or 50%. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Your chances of making the field goal, 42-yard field goal, depends on your field goal kicker. How good is your field goal kicker?
He's all right. Not like one they had last year, but I digress.
So he's probably going to make 75% of his kicks from 42 yards. Something like that. Maybe not.
Yeah.
That's kind of high for a college kicker. The average college kicker's not quite there at 42 yards. Probably more in the high 60s to 70%. Okay. So you've got let's say 45 or 50% chance of scoring a touchdown. So you've got a 70+% chance of kicking a field goal. Well, obviously, your decision to go for the field goal is going to produce points more consistently than the touchdown. However, the touchdown gives you 7 points and the field goal only 3. A lot smarter people than you and I have figured this out and determined. And I'm not saying that coaches should look at those analytics and forget their own brain and their own logic and their own feel for the game and completely disregard what they think and just go with the analytics. But there's been a lot of numbers crunching to put those situations into play and figure out what makes the most sense. That's like punting. Obviously, we've seen this in recent times. I'd say in the last 5+ years, we've seen where teams used to always punt. If they were at the 40-yard line, if they were at the other team's 40-yard line, it was 4th and 2, they're punting. Where now they go for it most of the time because it was figured out that to punt, number one, you have to have a really good punter that's going to punt the ball and pin the team inside the 5 or 10 yard line. Number one. Number two, just because you pin them down there doesn't mean, especially in this offensive age, that they're not going to just drive the ball out of there. And number three, you have given up an opportunity to score points to just gain some field position, which again, if you kick the ball in the end zone, is only 20 yards. So you might as well go for it. And in favor of just gaining 20 yards of field position, you might as well go for it, even though you're probably only going to get it 50 or 60% of the time.
Yeah, because I mean, like, look at Purdue. They're 3 of 11 on 4th down conversions this year, which is 27%. And I don't think they converted the 4th down in the Fresno State game because they tried the short yardage situation. It did not work at all. It's not worked at all. And that's mostly because of the offensive line this year and stuff like that. But maybe it'll change in the second half of the season soon, though.
Yeah, well, in that case, their offensive line has let them down, or their play calling or something. I've seen a couple of those plays, but yeah, you've got to convert up to the percentage at which you're expected to convert. Yeah, 27% on 4th down. You might as well punt the ball or kick field goals.
Yeah, I wonder if Mike Locksley, if Graham Harrell can get a hold of Mike Locksley and ask him what's their success since they're batting 1,000. But no, with Purdue missing some of they got their center coming back, but he's still coming back from ACL. But their offensive line this year is like, and like Carter and stuff like that. Yeah, that was a dumb interception, but the first one he threw at the end of the first half was just like a Hail Mary. So I don't know if even though it go down as an interception, would you still say it was a dumb interception, though?
No.
Trying to get something
that
going.
is not a dumb interception. And that's where we need more advanced stats to have columns that determine, okay, this was a Hail Mary at the half, because that's just, you might as well go for it. You've got nothing to lose. There's no risk. Nobody's going to catch the ball in the end zone and run 103 yards back. So there's no risk there. So there needs to be more advanced metrics in football. And those statistics probably exist somewhere, but they're not readily available. So that would be one thing. My answer to your Maryland situation, making all those 4th downs, I'm sure that they've done a great job converting those 4th downs. However, the defensive play that they have faced versus Purdue isn't really comparable. Syracuse, Fresno State, Wisconsin, those are better defenses than anything Maryland's faced.
Yeah, and do you think Maryland is getting ready to face the Pied Piper this week with the conference schedule coming up now? Do you think they're coming back down to reality?
Well, of course they are. They're going to lose a game. I can't even tell you off the top of my head who they're playing this week.
I can't either and stuff like that. But what games got you most? I know it's Monday and it's early and stuff. Which Big Ten game got you most intrigued this week?
Well, I got to tell you, I'd have to look at the Big Ten games. For one thing, Nebraska and Michigan certainly does not. Ohio State's not playing. Yeah, I'd have to go through the Big Ten schedule first before I answer that question. Penn State's playing Northwestern. I got no interest there, or little interest. I've got interest in everything, but to that degree, yeah, I'd have to look at the Big Ten schedule here.
Yeah, and as you know, I'm a diehard Purdue fan. I'm not a Penn State fan.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, I think I am. Even though my degree is from IU, just like your degree from Kent State, but you're an Ohio State fan. I gotta ask you this: is this the year that James Franklin does his stub his toe?
Well, let's back up just a second here, Michael. You are a Purdue fan, and you graduated from Indiana.
Yes, sir.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a free country. But were you a Purdue fan before you went to Indiana?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I can understand that. But I also, that is a bit curious to me because there's, of course, much more of a conflict there than there is me going to Kent State as an Ohio State fan my whole life, because they don't play on the same level of football.
Sure. And as you know, I use probably one of the top 5 journalism schools in the country, and that's what I went to school for.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, so I was kind of trying to follow your footsteps, Mark, but hey, you're better looking than I am. I got the face for radio. You got the face for TV.
Michael, stop it. Now, I would say in looking at the Big Ten schedule here, it is not a great week of play in the Big Ten, but we love college football. So as you have often said, I believe right here, that it's those weeks that we don't expect there to be great games, that many times there are some great games. If I could only watch one game in the Big Ten, I'm watching your Purdue Boilermakers take on Illinois. I think that's going to be the best game in the conference.
Okay, and I think that's what FS1, or is that on BTN?
That is on Peacock.
All right, fair enough, not bad. I just hope it's not nothing against Todd Blackledge. He knows what he's doing and stuff. Is great in analysis, but I hope it's not him, because it seems like the last few times he's had a Purdue game, it has not gone very well.
You're superstitious.
Now I'm just wondering stuff like that. But hey, on a serious note, though, how much do you think Colorado could bounce back this week, or is it going to be a repeat of last Saturday?
No, I do not think it's going to be a repeat of last Saturday. And I know that's probably an unpopular position because they stepped it up in class last weekend and they got just trucked. However, I believe that that's a bit of an aberration. I believe that Oregon's much better than Colorado. But if those two teams played on a regular basis and they played again, that game's not going to be 35-0 at half. Oregon is not that much better than Colorado. Again, I don't want people to misread me. They are significantly better than Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that this game most likely is just going to be a track meet in which USC is just so much more capable of keeping up and playing defense. I think, we're looking at 55-31.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of USC, what happened last Saturday night in Tempe? Did they forget not to show up?
That surprised me. And I rarely say that anything surprises me in college football. Mm-hmm. But we were on here taking calls and people were notifying me that Arizona State was hanging in the game. I turned on the game right in front of me, and I just couldn't believe that with all the injuries they have from a team that lost 29-0. How many shutouts are there in college football these days? Next to none.
Nothing. No.
Shutout against Fresno State, beat Southern Utah by a field goal, lost to a horrible, hapless Oklahoma State team that they were hanging with USC. I was expecting USC to hang a number on them similar to what they did at Stanford when they were up 49-0 at half. But no, Arizona State hung in there.
Yeah, and I did talk to Joey in the stream a little bit ago, and I did find his contact information and stuff like that. Last thing before I let you go, was you ever a voter for the Heisman?
No.
All right. Right now, is it between, I'm not saying, because I know Caleb Williams, because he's the defending winner of it, Michael Penix or Drew Allaire? If you had to vote right now, who would you vote for?
Oh, Michael Penix.
Hands down. And do you think he'd still be, if he was still at IU, do you think he would have these numbers? I would say probably not.
No. Not at all.
Fair enough and stuff like that. But
for a couple different reasons. He would not have the wide receiver room. He would not have the coaching, but he would also be facing better defenses.
That, and also facing, not trying to get hurt. But on the defensive side, who do you think might have a shot to be going to New York from the defensive side of the ball this year? Or is there too many to list?
That's a great question. That is a great question. I haven't really seen what Harold Perkins has done. He was my top defensive player in the country last year out of LSU. Jared Verse, I've seen play against LSU and Clemson, and he's been a force, the Florida State defensive end. There's somebody I'm forgetting here. Jerzon Newton. Now, he's not going to get much play because he doesn't play for a good team, but he's one of the very best defensive players in the country out of Illinois. So you're going to have to take care of him this week.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. There's got to be a defensive back who's off to a great start. Those are the first couple names that come to mind.
Mhm.
There was a player that had 4 sacks Saturday. Now I can't remember who that was.
Okay, I can't either. So, but while you look it up, I was say I mean, yeah, he's a true freshman and stuff like that. But Dylan Thiemann, his two older brothers played at Purdue, and in my opinion, he's the best one of the three. I mean, he is like leading the team in tackles as a safety. Also, and how often do you see a safety leading in tackles as a true freshman?
Well, as a true freshman, no. In terms of a safety leading the team in tackles, that happens quite often.
No, I was just wondering stuff like that. All right, Mark, I've took my 20,000 years of being with you and stuff like that. I will be with you again maybe later this week, but definitely on Friday and Saturday. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, Michael.
See ya.
Appreciate it.
Spoiler up.
I believe that was Jonah Ellis who had 4 sacks for Utah against UCLA. I might be wrong on that, but Jonah Ellis does lead the nation in sacks, and I think he had 4 on Saturday. So, yeah, Heisman candidates on the defensive side, difficult to come up with, but there's 3 for you. 15-5 against the spread this past weekend. 15-5 against the spread. I believe the number, I will verify it, 51-32 against the spread for the season. That's north of 60%, well north of 60%. And let's see, 17-4 money line. So there's 2 ways you can get my predictions and also the Discord link. And you also get the Steve Merrill under the radar selection. 16-1 against the spread since week 1 of 2022. We get a exclusive pick under the radar selection from Steve Merrill from Wager Talk. This is the only place you can get it. He delivers all sorts of predictions, NFL and Major League Baseball. The NBA is coming up. All of that he delivers on Wager Talk and wagertalk.com. But you get the exclusive under the radar selection only here at the Voice of College Football, and he's 16-1 against the spread. So I think that's worth at least $5 a month. That's my thought. All right, so that's a YouTube membership, and that's also on Patreon. JJ McCarthy joining us tonight. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. Change the name, man. It's a little better for you.
Oh, look at that. I can actually say that. It can come out of my mouth now going forward. Michigan man's here.
Hey, what's up, man? I rewatched the Penn State game, man, and let me tell you, that is a good team. That is a really good team. I like a lot of the things they're doing schematically on offense.
Yeah.
I think it's very creative. I like how they're one of the few teams that are actually trying to use the QB sneak. It looks like they've watched some tape, maybe some Eagles tape, and they're using it. But the way they're using jumbo, the way they're using what's that formation called where they got the 2 backs in the backfield? Is that jumbo?
Jumbo personnel. Sure.
Yeah, jumbo. The way they're using jumbo to not only run the ball but do some play action out of it. It's some of the best schematics I've seen on offense. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, my thoughts are that they've got Kirk Shiraka back the last couple of years, so he was effective for them in the past. I think that their tight end Theo Johnson's a really good player. They like to get him involved, and they've got 2 backs. They come out of the backfield that can give the defense something to think about because they're 2 really good receiving backs. So
they don't got a lot of holes, man.
No,
they don't really got. I don't even know if they got a weakness that I could really say is a weakness.
Yeah.
I mean, they may have things that they're not as good at as other teams, but I wouldn't call it a weakness.
Exactly. Their wide receiver core is not excellent, but it's not a weakness. It's just not at the standard of some other teams across the country, Texas, Ohio State, Washington, etc. But it's not a weakness. So I'm right there with you. When I was really doing a deep dive right before my predictions, I thought I came very close to picking Penn State to win the Big Ten, but I did not.
Yeah, and Drew Allar has one, he throws a beautiful ball.
Yeah.
And 2, he's got a great release.
Oh, I screwed up on their offensive coordinator. That's right. They brought back Mike Yursich. So, David, thank you so much for that. And how could I forget that? We were just talking to our Penn State guy, Marty Leap, who was dropping the knowledge about Mike Yursich. So go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, I watch his throwing motion and the way the ball just comes out his hand. It's I'm trying to make maybe like it's Haskins-esque. That might be a little hyperbole, but he has that kind of just like effortless throwing motion to me.
I don't think it's hyperbole at all. The first time I saw him throw a ball was the first week of last season, and he came off the bench not in mop-up time. The game was still, it was a great game with Purdue, and in the first ball that came out of his hand, he whipped a throw to the sideline that just whistled to the sideline, and it was, it was a long hash all the way across the field throw, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm worried, man. As a Michigan fan, that game got me. That's the one game I think that's got me super nervous. Probably the number one spot that's got me.
Yeah.
Pretty nervous. I'm kind of mad at the schedule Michigan got right now because we might not play a ranked opponent till maybe Penn State actually.
Well, you're not.
So
none of those teams are going to get ranked. It's not even close.
Yeah.
That's not Michigan's fault, but none of those teams are. Somebody would have to go on a tear to get ranked before the Michigan game. Let's see.
Because we got Nebraska, then Minnesota, and then Michigan State, maybe.
Yeah, Michigan State, Indiana. None of those teams are man, it's close to being ranked. I don't think they're going to face a team with a winning record.
Yeah, well, it's pretty wild because, like, look, I like what I see, and it feels like they're treating it like, it feels like they're not really. It feels like a lot of it's preseason games to me, but I just want to see them. It sucks that we got to wait till pretty much Penn State to see like a challenge. I want to see, because that's one thing I like. Ohio State. They went on the road first week and they went Notre Dame, so you got to see like them actually, get challenged. And like I don't like that we have to wait that long to get challenged.
I don't like it either, but that's the last time that's going to happen in this conference.
Yeah, it is. It is. Because I can see that penalty. Look, the other thing is that could really hurt Michigan in terms of playoffs, because they could have one loss, right? They could have one loss and have no shot maybe of getting in because of how weak the schedule is this year.
Yeah, if the committee is going to truly look at schedule and not name brand and if Michigan somewhat squeaks by in the two big games or whatever games they win versus the loss, and if it all depends, I still think they're going to be fine. But that Big Ten championship game is not going to help them either. They're gonna play a team that's similar to the team that they played last year when they played a 8-4 Purdue team.
Hey, what's the tiebreaker on a three-way tie?
It is the record of the it's the record of the non-division opponent. So whoever has the toughest schedule in the West.
Okay, so can we go through this real quick? So who Penn State got Iowa? They got Iowa and who else? Because it's three, right?
Northwestern. They've got Iowa, Northwestern, and Penn State. Oh, they already played Illinois. They've got Iowa, Illinois, and Northwestern.
Okay, and then Ohio
State has Minnesota. Who do they have? Minnesota. While I look them up, who does Michigan have? They got
they got Nebraska and Minnesota off the top. The third one, I'm trying to remember. I'm having a brain fart with that one too. I know it's Minnesota and Nebraska.
All right, Michigan has to play. Of course, Nebraska this week, Minnesota the next week, and Purdue.
Yeah, so Michigan might have the well. Who was Ohio State's other one?
I'm looking it up right now. Ohio State has Purdue, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Wisconsin
Okay,
could really
so
help out
Michigan has
Ohio State if they kind of break free from everybody else.
or Iowa because Michigan has the worst one. Let's be real. Michigan has the worst.
Yeah, they do. Although I would have told you before this weekend that what would really weight down Penn State's is that they've got Northwestern, which at the beginning of the season nobody thought that they would win a game, but they just did. So maybe they won't have quite the awful record that we think. But if they do, let's say Northwestern goes into the tank and finishes 1-8, they're really going to weigh down Penn State's. And then I don't know past that if there's a tie between two of them, where they go after that.
They might go to out of conference.
No,
they'll never do. Okay, I don't know how they do that.
they're
Then.
not determining a conference championship based on what happens outside the conference. It probably goes to point. I'll look it up here and I'll try to find it.
Oh, like margin of victory,
point differential. Yeah.
Okay. Well, because Michigan and Ohio State share two of the same opponents from the West.
Did you say
so? It's
two?
really because didn't you say they play Minnesota and Purdue?
Yes.
Doesn't Michigan play Minnesota and Purdue?
Yeah. So it comes down to whether Nebraska or Wisconsin's going to be better.
Okay, I'd probably pick Wisconsin.
Yeah, I would think so.
Because this year, honestly, might be the highest chance of a three-way tie that I can remember. Honestly.
Okay.
That would be fascinating to see.
All right. I'm not going to weed through all this right now, but I've got the tiebreaker up right now, but it's pretty involved. I just know in weeding through this before that I determined that the first tiebreaker would be Western Division record.
Because do you feel like this is like one of the years where you could see that happening?
Oh, sure. Yeah, this would be the year.
Because I could see Michigan, because they got to go to Penn State. That's a tough game, man. That's a tough game. And then, I mean, honestly, to me, this is Penn State's best chance to beat Ohio State.
Yeah.
In my opinion, because because Ohio State, I feel like on offense, if you look at the two Power 5 teams they've played, they have yet to put up 30 points. Actually, they haven't even put up 25 points. And then the one team they put up, crazy numbers against, Western Kentucky, just gave up 800 yards to Troy. So I'm not convinced that this Ohio State offense hasn't taken a few steps back yet. So I think that evens it out for Penn State. I think Penn State might actually have the better offense this year. The more, maybe not as talented, but more balanced all around than Ohio State has.
All right. Well, this is a Big Ten show, and because we are complete football nerds, I guess we can go through these tiebreakers. Everybody follow along here. They're on the screen. All right. Point number one, if you get three teams tied, the records of the three or more tied teams will be compared based on winning percentage in games between the tied teams. So that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense because they're going to be all one and one. But this is in case one of them loses a game outside of the three. Like if they all went
out of conference.
Yeah, no, not out of conference. If they all went, let's say if this was the Western Division and three teams tied and went 7-2 and they all lost to different teams.
Oh.
Like we're thinking of it a very clean way where Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan.
Oh, I get it. Yeah.
But they can lose to all sorts of different teams. Okay.
But they're in the same division. I'm confused.
Okay. Well, it doesn't matter. It's not going to matter. It would only come into play if they had more than one loss. If they had 2 losses,
Oh
then,
yeah, okay, I get it now.
yeah, then they could be, Ohio State could have lost to better teams than the other 2.
I was thinking of just one loss. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, like if they all lost to each other, but then they all lost another game, then
that's
whoever
not
lost to the best team, they would get the tiebreaker.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because that means that you anyway, I'm not going to go into it. Okay, the second is the records of the 3 tied teams will be compared based on winning percentage within the division. Well, again, their winning percentages in the division is going to be exactly the same because they're going to beat each other and beat everyone else. Okay, number 3, the records of the 3 teams will be compared against the next highest placed teams in their division in order. And again, that's all going to be tied too. So these are only applied if there are multiple losses where this can be different, but they're all going to have exactly the same resume until we get to
4 right there. 4.
The records of the 3 teams will be compared based on winning percentage against all common conference opponents. Well, that's going to be the same because again, they're only going to lose to each other, and their common opponents are going to be the same record. They're going to beat all of them. Okay. The records of the 3 teams will be compared based on the best cumulative conference winning percentage of non-division opponents. That's where it comes into play. The team that played the best teams in the West is going to go to the Big Ten championship game.
Okay, so now let's say 2 teams get tied up. Let's say 2 teams, their out of division opponents got the same winning percentage. It goes to 7, which is what?
Let's say that. Yeah, let's say they play 27 games in conference play. Let's say 2 of them, they're 2. Let's say Ohio State and Michigan, their 3 opponents in the West went 14 and 13, for example.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you go back, then it becomes a 2-way tie, and you go back to a 2-way tie. And
then it's just wait.
Then it might go back to a 2-way tie where the winner of the game goes to.
Does it go to 7 though? What's 7 and 8?
Let's see here. So 7 is the team with the best overall winning percentage shall be the representative.
So it does include out of conference.
Where it goes to out of conference. Well, they're all going to have the same record. Again, if they just beat everyone else, they're all going to be
what's
11
8
and 1. And then 8.
Wait, the random is chosen by a random draw?
Random draw. How about that? That could happen.
That is wild.
No, they need a point differential. That's not going to fly with anyone.
That is wild.
No, they need to go.
Wait. So you're trying to tell me that's wild, man.
See, yeah, exactly. You're not going to tell me, let's say, if Penn State won all of its games by 1 point and Michigan won all of its games by 50 points, that you don't make a judgment.
What is this, the lottery?
Yeah, exactly. And for as much as I don't agree with point differentials, at some point you have to go to it to just determine which team played better against the schedule. Who was more dominant, and the best way to figure that out is point differential.
I wouldn't feel good about that.
No, that should not happen. A random draw.
Is that even a true division champ at that point?
like who's in the room when this is drawn?
Yeah. I was not expecting that at all.
That seems a bit seedy. That could be a bit.
That is wild, man.
That takes us back
to
wild.
1973.
Has anyone in the chat made a reference to 1973? Do you know what happened in 1973? Michigan man, you with us? We might have lost him.
What happened?
What happened in 1973?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I lost you.
No,
there?
no, it's before my
Oh, there
time,
you are.
man.
Okay, 1973. Ohio State and
Can you hear
Michigan
me?
both went.
Yeah, that's
Yes. Do you have me?
before.
I keep losing you. Do you just want me to tell you what happened in 1973? This is what happened in 1973.
Can you hear me now?
Keep that down. Yes. 1973. There's a great documentary on the Big Ten Network about it. Ohio State and Michigan both went undefeated. All their games, non-conference, conference, they were both 10-0. And they tied. And of course, there was no overtime then. So they just tied. Well, what didn't quite make any sense to me was they used to have a rule in the Big Ten that the team that had gone most recently to the Rose Bowl had to stay home in favor of the team that had not gone as recently, if you follow me.
So I think I saw it. You know what? I think I watched that old documentary with Bo Schembechler's in it. You know what I'm talking about? I do remember them bringing that up.
Yeah, so they tied, and Ohio State went to the Rose Bowl the year before. So Michigan should have gone to the Rose Bowl. I don't know why they voted, because there was a rule in the Big Ten, and this ripped off Ohio State out of going to a few Rose Bowls because they tied Iowa one time, they tied Wisconsin one time, and because those teams hadn't been to the Rose Bowl in forever, they got to go.
Yeah, I remember Bo was furious
because they did back then. Not everyone played well as it is today. Not everyone played each other. So Ohio State in 93 tied Wisconsin, and Wisconsin got to go to the Rose Bowl. And in 1981, Ohio State and Iowa did not play, and they tied for the Big Ten title, and Iowa got to go because they hadn't been there as recently as Ohio State. So I feel for the Michigan fan here in 1973, because the rule was that Michigan should have gone to the Rose Bowl. But they had
that is crazy.
But they had a vote. They had the athletic directors all vote, and
that is crazy. So wait, hold on. So this is what I was thinking, man. This is what would be frustrating. So if Michigan and Ohio State are in a tie this year, and Michigan blew out, like let's say they completely just destroyed all their out of conference teams by 30, and Ohio State, 2 of the games were like they won by like 10 or 15 points. You're gonna put the vice versa. This is vice versa, obviously.
Sure.
You're gonna put Ohio State in that scraped by. That's what that's telling me.
And whoever put this together, they should understand that even though this is most likely not going to happen, that when you have dominant teams in a conference that beat everyone else, you can go through these tiebreakers real quick. You just keep going because they don't apply when 2 teams or 3 teams beat everyone else, just like they did last year. Those 3 teams went 24-0 against everybody else in the conference.
Yeah, man. Like they got to get on that, man. They got to, because that could happen.
Random draw.
Treating like it's a lottery. What is this? The NBA with the lottery picks? That is crazy,
else, wouldn't it?
No, that's crazy, man. All right, man. Well, good talk, man. Can't wait to this weekend, man. We get another cupcake game. Can't wait. I know it's a Big Ten opponent, and I know they got the number 1 rush D. I get that, but I mean, I don't know how much I'm gonna take out of that. So
yeah, I like Michigan to win this. Nebraska, I think they'll play very inspired football. They're playing at home. They tend to raise their level of play to their opponents. These non-conference games that they've played, this game they played against Louisiana Tech. Oh my word. They only
I saw that.
14. Yeah, they're not really good. Michigan's going to win by 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, no, I saw that, man. One last thing. What do you think about that Indiana comeback? Or not Indiana, my bad, Northwestern.
I did not expect that. I didn't think they had it in them. That kind of yardage. Ben Bryant, the former Cincinnati quarterback, threw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, and they had a wide receiver catch 10 balls for 215. I didn't know that Northwestern could mount that kind of offense.
Hey, you know who had the game time drive to send it to overtime?
I'm guessing, since you're bringing it up, AJ Henning.
Yeah, hey man, there you go, man. Look, we blessed them, man. We blessed them. Now they got to win. They might not have had.
Yeah, they got somebody on the team that's used to winning.
That's true. Man. Well, I'm gonna get out of here. Good talk, man. We hashed it out.
There it is. We have solved the problems of the world, or we've just discovered that there are more problems in the world.
Oh yeah, most definitely, man. Man.
Okay, man. Good to talk to you. All right, that is our Michigan man, curious about the tiebreaker system, and as I believe Mozart's Ghost had mentioned in here, yes, like this is most likely not going to happen. It does not have a high probability of happening, of course, because rarely do we go to a divisional tiebreaker. However, it's not that unfathomable that all it really takes is really just takes two things. Takes those three teams defeating each other, and then it just takes two of the three, whomever they are, to have played two teams in the other division that ended up having the same conference record. And if you think about it, in the Big Ten Western Division, that's fairly likely to happen. There's going to be a lot of 5-4, 4-5, 3-6. And when you add three of those up, you know, one of them could have played three teams that went 5-4, 4-5, and 2-7. And they've got 11 combined wins. And then the other one, their three teams that they played went 6-3, 3-6, 2-7. They had not 11 combined wins. You know, it's not that remarkable, or the odds aren't that incredibly long. They're long, and I would like to see it. I would love to see the drama of the tiebreaker come into play, because then that also puts a ton of pressure on the committee, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, because really they are still determining who really is the best of the three. Even though the Big Ten standings and tiebreaker process would determine, okay, Penn State's going to the championship game, that doesn't necessarily mean that the committee believes that they're the best team. And let's say Penn State, let's say this all plays out and Penn State goes to the Big Ten championship game 11-1, and they beat Michigan, but they lost to Ohio State, and therefore Michigan beat Ohio State, and we've got a three-way tie. And Penn State goes to the Big Ten championship game based on their three opponents having one more win. Their three Western Division opponents just had one more win than either Ohio State or Michigan. And then Penn State, let's say, plays a lackluster game in the Big Ten championship game. They're playing Iowa, and they win in a rematch 27-23. Is the committee really going to look at that result favorably? Let's say Iowa wins the West at 6-3 and they're 9-3. Or let's say Wisconsin wins the West at 6-3 in the conference, but they lost a non-conference game and they're 8-4. And they lose the Big Ten championship game, so they're an 8-5 team. Penn State beats an 8-5 Wisconsin team in the Big Ten championship game. How favorably is the committee going to look upon that game? Then let's say Ohio State beat Wisconsin in the regular season 34-17 on the road. And the committee's like, are we really going to send Penn State to the playoff? They did win the Big Ten championship. However, they won it on this crazy tiebreaker system. So that didn't prove anything. It wasn't like, they have a plus 175 point differential and Michigan's is only plus 63 and Ohio State's is only plus 48. So they are decidedly the more dominant team on the scoreboard in the conference. No, it's this random draw, or having played three teams that have one more win in the conference than the other two teams, and then they play a lackluster conference championship game. Well, the committee might still say, well, wait a minute. Before we even get to Michigan, Ohio State beat Penn State head-to-head, plus their common opponent outside the division, Penn State scraped by and Ohio State beat solidly on the road. And I'm just making up a scenario. You could use any of the teams to fill this scenario. Yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy. There was it didn't come into play, I do not believe, in the ACC Coastal Division a few years ago. But I believe that there was a scenario near the end of the season in which there was a possibility for something like a 4-way tie out of the 7 teams in the ACC Coastal Division. We could see that out of the Big Ten Western Division this year. Would it be that? I know that we still view Wisconsin and Iowa, despite that horrific performance against Penn State, that we still view Iowa, most of us, as one of the 2 best teams. But let's say, well, it doesn't look like it's going to be Minnesota. Minnesota lost a game on Saturday that they could not afford to lose. They lost to maybe the worst team in the conference. And they are the only team. Minnesota is the only team in the Big Ten Western Division that has to play both. Or let me rephrase that. They're the only team of the supposed contenders, Minnesota, that has to play both Ohio State and Michigan. So Minnesota could not drop that game on Saturday. So I don't know who you would consider to be in the running, but if Iowa's not as good as we thought, and Wisconsin stumbles a few times, and they do have to play Ohio State, so that should be a loss, then maybe we get a 3-way tie in the West at 6-3. Now, that's not going to provide nearly the same drama as this does, because this involves the playoff with the Big Ten East. The West has once again, everyone, let this conference down. Wisconsin lost to Washington State. Minnesota lost to North Carolina. Purdue lost to Syracuse and Fresno State. Nebraska lost to Colorado. Not to mention, nobody was expecting anything out of Northwestern, but they are now a punching bag for Duke, who has beaten them 5 of the last 7 years. So the only team, and Illinois, trounced by Kansas. So think about this. In the Big Ten Western Division, the Iowa win over Iowa State is the only non-conference win over a Power 5 in the Big Ten Western Division. Am I missing anything here? Minnesota lost. Nebraska lost. Northwestern lost. Purdue lost. Oh, Purdue won against Virginia Tech. Okay, let's all jump for joy over that one. So Purdue did win. So the Big Ten Western Division has wins over Virginia Tech and Iowa State. The Big Ten this past weekend went unscathed non-conference. Check out the video I posted. We went through our conference rankings. But we went through our conference rankings, and the Big Ten is coming off a 4-0 weekend. However, Illinois beat Florida Atlantic by 6 points. Indiana needed overtime to beat Akron. What was the other play? The other game? Oh, Nebraska. Unimpressive in defeating Louisiana Tech. And, of course, Ohio State. If Ohio State would have lost to Notre Dame, then, my goodness, Mike, if Michigan played someone, then they would be higher ranked. Actually, I don't even know if they've earned the ranking that I've handed them. They have played one of the worst schedules in the country. And that's not a record for you. That's a record this year. I actually keep track. If I had a staff, I would keep track of such things to show all of you that I guarantee this. This is a guarantee that I have ranked Ohio State lower than the AP poll many more times than I've ranked Ohio State higher than the AP poll. I guarantee that. Guarantee that. Mike is saying that the Rutgers win is going to turn out to be a better win than people anticipate. I do think that that's a decent win. Rutgers took care of Virginia Tech pretty easily. They took care of a Temple team that also got drubbed by Miami. I don't know how much to put into that win. Rutgers isn't a horrible team. They are, out of 70 Power 5 teams, I think the count is actually 69 Power 5 teams. They're in the bottom 15 still. But the bottom of the Big Ten is so close. It's not only bad, but it's close. Like right now, I cannot separate. And if anybody comes on here and says that they can separate, you're joking yourself. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have an opinion, of course, about who's better than whom. I have my opinion, but if you grab Indiana, Michigan State, Rutgers, Northwestern, Minnesota, after that performance on Saturday, Purdue, Illinois, those 7 teams, throw them up in the air. There's just no way to even separate those teams as it stands right now until they play each other. Hummus Hero says Rutgers might be more like 45 to 55 in the Power 5. It's hard to tell just yet. Yeah, that would not surprise me if they were that high. I'm not sold on them being quite that high, but it would be so difficult to rank. And if I had the time, and if Buckeye Mike got his wish and I got a staff, then I would rank every team in the country, because I think if you're actually going to do rankings, then you should rank every team in the country. Why stop at 25? What's the big deal about 26? 26, they're only one spot away from 25. They should be ranked as well. If you're going to rank them, you might as well rank every team. It's just as difficult. It is no harder to rank bad teams than it is to rank good teams. Let me give you a collection of teams, and you try to sort these teams out. Rutgers, Indiana, Purdue, Minnesota, Illinois, Northwestern, Iowa State, Cincinnati, Baylor, Arizona, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Boston College, you had to take those 15 to 20 teams. Who knows? Who knows? Jason likes Rutgers and maybe Wake Forest first in that group. Wake Forest just lost to Georgia Tech by 2 touchdowns on Saturday. Yes, Mike, we do know that for the record, yes. And so I will be just as harsh on Ohio State playing Southern Miss, Western Michigan, and Marshall. Let's also understand there's a difference. There's one difference. I'm not excusing that schedule. However, there is a difference. Can anyone come up with that? The difference between Michigan's situation the last 2 years and Ohio State's situation next season? What's the difference? The difference is that, yes, Jason is pointing it out. UCLA is not a member of the Big Ten. Michigan could have played those 2 games against UCLA. UCLA is not part of the Big Ten currently. Michigan could have played those 2 games. Next year, Ohio State cannot keep a non-conference game against a team that's going to be a conference opponent. What were they supposed to do about that? Were they supposed to have the Big Ten come out with their scheduling format and Ohio State plays Washington in the conference, and so they're going to play them twice? All right, folks. Yes, Southern Miss, Western Michigan, Marshall. And much like Michigan this year, it shouldn't hurt Ohio State. Buckeye Mike says, Mark, maybe for a future show or video, you should give your thoughts on this coming year's class of College Football Hall of Fame. Yeah, we don't delve too much into the College Football Hall of Fame. If you would search on YouTube, me talking about a Hall of Fame, because this comes to mind, I had some rather choice words to say about the Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame, a long, long time ago. That's a relic on YouTube. It's like 11 or 12 years old. Yes, yes, yes. I don't even know when the College Football Hall of Fame comes out. We usually talk about that on the Buckeye Show. That usually gets brought up. Let's see, the class of 2023. It is so much more difficult to select a College Football Hall of Fame than it is the Pro Football Hall of Fame, because it's so much easier to measure, first of all, long careers. We're talking about 10, 12, 15-year careers in the NFL, playing light competition. The statistics are so much more meaningful than in college. Some of these guys have like 1 great season, 2 great seasons. All right. So, man, that's a long list of players. We've got, I see Michael Bishop there. I see Reggie Bush, Dwight Freeney. I see that looks like Eric Berry, Luke Kuechly, Bryant McKinney's there, Michael Stonebreaker, Tim Tebow, Michael Westbrook, Mark Richt, Roy Kramer. Yes, Firmus Paradox. You learn something new every day. Rutgers does indeed have a football team. And according to Brad, they are headed in the right direction. I would agree as well. I think they're taking baby steps, though. At this rate, they may get to a bowl game in about 7 years, but they are going in the right direction. Michigan Man Moose says Ohio State canceled with Washington. Is that on the team also? I don't know what that means. Buckeye Mike, they released their top 78 possibilities a few months ago. 78. So they've got some rather interesting criteria. One would be something to the effect that no school can have a Hall of Fame player 2 consecutive years. I think that there's something to that degree. And then, of course, this completely moronic 60% winning percentage criteria. That's idiotic. Hummus Hero, Ohio State has never failed to schedule at least one Power 5 opponent in the history of the program. The only year they didn't play one was 2019, and that was because TCU did not want 2 Power 5 road games. And they played Cincinnati, which at that point was better than a pretty high majority of Power 5 teams. Rob, these last 2 years of Michigan winning, wearing on Mark. Yes, haven't you seen me just beaten down, just completely, just dragging? Yes, thank you for that, Jason. You have to be a first-team All-American. That, to me, is dumb as well. Criterias, I can agree with. I can agree with criteria. I can't agree with rules. Rules get you in trouble because rules pin you down to if you make a rule, and you don't think about all the different scenarios and possibilities, then you are in danger of putting yourself in a position you didn't want to be in, putting yourself or having to do something, as opposed to guidelines. Guidelines are typically better than rules, unless you're dealing with a bunch of 5-year-olds. Michael, the voice of college football, Mark, TCU smoked Purdue also in 2019 besides Cincinnati. (2019) TCU smoked Purdue. Yes. TCU played Cincinnati 2019. Cincinnati played Ohio State in 2019. Where did Joe Thomas go to school? He went to Wisconsin. Joe Thomas has one of the more interesting pro football Hall of Fame resumes for this reason. Can you think of a player? They would have to be an offensive lineman because they don't accumulate statistics that people pay attention to, at least. So no statistics accumulated, and played for a horrible team, never played in the playoffs, and is a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's just unprecedented. I cannot think of anyone, any type of candidates for the Pro Football Hall of Fame that meet those criteria, that played for lousy teams, never played a meaningful game in the NFL in history, and didn't have statistics to back up his greatness. It's all scouting report. It's all reputation. It's all of those things. Basically, his peers and scouts tell us that Joe Thomas was one of the greatest players of all time. As Hero, TCU initially had Purdue and Ohio State scheduled in 2019, both on the road. Ohio State agreed to just do the neutral site game in 2018, even though I think it was at Jerry World. Yes, it was. No, that's not my Bootzilla. That's not my my question. I understand. Butkus would be a good example. but there are tackle statistics. So there are statistics. I don't know if they were necessarily keeping those at that time. So they never made the playoffs. Now, let's understand that was in a different NFL where you had to be truly excellent to make the playoffs. There's a year when the Los Angeles Rams went 11-2-1 and missed the playoffs in 65. So, but Gale Sayers accumulated statistics to show his greatness. I'm talking about a player who never played for a good team, who didn't have any statistics to back up his greatness, and made the Hall of Fame. I am going to drop the link to the show in the chat. The link is also in the description section of the videos. So you can grab the link there. Also, of course, the Amazon link's in the description section of all the videos. Grab the Amazon link and please use it to help us grow the channel. We've got an SEC channel. We've got a Big 12 channel. And even if you hate the SEC, could care less to watch any SEC videos, same thing with the Big 12. But you enjoy what we do and you want us to keep going, then please subscribe to the SEC and the Big 12 channels, because that will help us considerably. Again, conference rankings have been released. Check out the video. Also, we had some fun with the entire Lou Holtz, Ryan Day fiasco. Had some fun with that. Check out the video we posted last night on that. Let's see if I can find that. So this all hit me way after the fact. Number one, because I don't watch the studio shows, so I didn't see this initially. So what happened here was that following the Ohio State Notre Dame game, as Ryan Day was being interviewed on the field, I was setting up here. The game was over. I rushed in here to set up and move things, move lighting and so forth, and set up here. So I didn't listen to the Ryan Day interview, but I saw that he was on the field being interviewed. And I turned up the audio. By that time, he had already made his comments about Lou Holtz, and he was talking about the final play. So then I get on here and I hear a number of you guys talking about and leaving comments in the chat about Lou Holtz and Ryan Day. And I had a couple people text message me about the same thing. So after I got off here, I looked it up. Well, actually not that night. The next day on Sunday, I looked it up and thought it was pretty entertaining. And so I provided my take. My take on Twitter there is that I'm just now catching up with what Lou Holtz said. Parentheses, I try to stay away from mindless information shows. Does anyone pick up on the irony of stating that an opponent of Notre Dame doesn't win big games? Ohio State's one of the only three entities, along with the SEC and Clemson, that has accomplished anything in the playoff era and has the best winning percentage of practically any time parameter selected in history, meaning the last 20 years, 50 years, 70 years, all time, etc. Lou Holtz was a great coach. I respect his accomplishments, but the man was not making sense 15 years ago on ESPN. I can only imagine what proceeds from the man's mouth now. So that gained some attention, as in 161,000 views and 800 likes and 83 comments and 70 retweets. Reposts doesn't slide off the tongue like retweets does. Thank you, Bootzilla. Charisse is here. Good to have Charisse in play. Brad, keep chopping. Bilal, good to have all of you here at the Voice of College Football. Also, and I hope that this is a welcome place for Notre Dame fans. I hope we still have our Notre Dame fans that show up. I got to say, I was annoyed at Notre Dame fans the entire offseason. Not because they were playing Ohio State, not because some of them were very hopeful and optimistic about winning, because look how close they came to winning. Was their optimism and their hope legitimate? Of course it was. They played the game extremely well. They should have won. They had about 7 different times in that final drive that if they would have made a play, the game would have been over. So I have no issue with Notre Dame fans being optimistic, with them being hopeful and believing that their team was going to win that game. Absolutely no issue with that. The only issue I had with Notre Dame fans during the offseason and leading up to this game was twofold. Number one, the Notre Dame fans who said that they guaranteed that they were going to win. Now, that's the most idiotic thing to do, guaranteeing that you're going to win a game. Unless you're Alabama and you're playing the Citadel, then their fans can say, I guarantee we're going to win this week. Okay, great. But I'm talking about a competitive game. So nobody can guarantee anything. Number two is that Notre Dame fans were comparing their recent history, meaning the last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, to Ohio State's. And it's not comparable. It's not debatable. It's not close. Look up Ohio State's year-to-year records and Notre Dame's year-to-year records. I am almost positive, I would have to double check myself. I believe that Notre Dame has only had one season in the last 30 years. One season that they had a better record than Ohio State. That's crazy when you think about it. I'm sure Iowa, Wisconsin, certainly Michigan State, Penn State, all those teams have had several seasons. Well, I don't know about several, a few seasons better than Ohio State in the last 25 or 30 years. Notre Dame once. Whoops, I almost knocked us off the air. All right, so Notre Dame. All right. 2022. Notre Dame went 9-4. Ohio State 11-2. In 21, Notre Dame went 11-2. Ohio State went 11-2. In 2020, Notre Dame went 10-2. Ohio State went 7-1. So throw that year out. 2019, Notre Dame 11-2. Ohio State 13-1. 2018, Notre Dame 12-1. Ohio State 13-1. 2017, Notre Dame 10-3. Ohio State 12-2. 2016, Notre Dame 4-8. Ohio State 11-2. 2015, Notre Dame 10-3. Ohio State 12-1. 2014, Notre Dame 8-5. Ohio State 14-1. 2013, Notre Dame 9-4. Ohio State 12-2. 2012, Notre Dame 12-1. Ohio State 12-0. 2011, Notre Dame 8-5. Ohio State 6-7. Ding, 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 ding. 2010, Notre Dame 8-5. Ohio State 12-1. 2009, Notre Dame 6-6, Ohio State 11-2. 2008, Notre Dame 7-6, Ohio State 10-3. 2007, Notre Dame 3-9, Ohio State 11-2. 2006, Notre Dame 10-3, Ohio State 12-1. 2005, Notre Dame 9-3, Ohio State 10-2. 2004, Notre Dame 6-6, Ohio State 8-4. 2003, Notre Dame 5-7, Ohio State 11-2. 2002, Notre Dame 10-3, Ohio State 14-0. 2001, Notre Dame 5-6, Ohio State 7-5. 2000, Notre Dame 9-3, Ohio State 8-4. Ding, 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 ding. There's 2 in 23 years. 1999, Notre Dame 5-7, Ohio State 6-6. 1998, Notre Dame 9-3, Ohio State 11-1. 1997, Notre Dame 7-6, Ohio State 10-3. 1996, Notre Dame 8-3, Ohio State 11-1. 1995, Notre Dame 9-3, Ohio State 11-2. 1994, Notre Dame 6-5-1, Ohio State 9-4. We go back 30 years to Notre Dame and a team that has an argument, and I include them in my argument and award them a national championship in 1993. So since 1993, Ohio State has had a better record than Notre Dame 28 times and Notre Dame twice. Whew. All right. Oh, here we go. Got our friend Will here just in time. Will, how you doing tonight?
I was gonna wait to call in, but I had to call.
Well,
I'm mentally healthy enough now from the game.
Well, do you mind if I say a few things first?
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if you heard my rant here in the last 3 minutes. So you know that you're one of our favorites, right, Will?
Yes.
We love you, Will. And I feel horrible that you lost that game because I know what it felt like many times throughout my life, losing a big game in excruciatingly close fashion. That, you couldn't even draw up a scenario that would be any closer. That's as close as it gets. 1 second on the clock, last play, the whole deal.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be explained. It's just excruciatingly close.
Mm-hmm.
And Notre Dame played an outstanding game. It can be argued that they played a better game.
Mm-hmm.
That can be argued all night, one way or the other. What can't be argued is that the teams were that close.
Yeah.
So regardless of who won the game, you can't come away with saying, well, Ohio State's definitely better. No, they're not. They're not definitely better. They was that close. The two things that have irritated me about some, I underlined some Notre Dame fans over the last 6 months, has been, number one, some guaranteeing a win. Like, I don't even know how any reasonable person does that against anyone. And number two, making comments about the program being better in recent years. So those have been my two annoyances with Notre Dame fans. You don't have to address that. If you want to talk about the game, whatever you want to talk about, we'll go right ahead.
I've stayed away from all Notre Dame Ohio State content, so I've not watched your Ryan Day Lou Holtz video. I'll say that first.
It's very respectful, I believe.
Okay, I'll watch it.
I like Lou Holtz.
I don't understand why Ryan Day took it so seriously. I mean, of course Lou Holtz is going to pick Notre Dame to win. He's Lou Holtz. And you can make an argument that Notre Dame had a better team going into the game. So, I don't understand why you're so angry. How thin of a skin does a guy have to say that?
I agree. I stated that. I said, on one hand, Ryan Day has every right in the world to respond. It's a free country. He can respond. So I'm not trying to take away his right to respond. And I think he feels a lot of pressure to win, of course. And he also is annoyed by his team being called soft. So he lashed out. Now, Lou Holtz, his opinion about football is highly valued because he knows a ton about football.
Mhm.
However, his opinion basically means
Take it with
nothing.
a huge grain of salt.
His opinion means not.
Yeah.
For all those years he was on ESPN, he never picked Notre Dame to lose a game.
Yes.
Always picked them to win. He's just a homer.
Yeah. So I just don't understand why. And like, we're also, I have to say this: Ryan Day has not accomplished what Lou Holtz has accomplished. I mean, not close. I mean, you can make an argument Lou Holtz should have won 3 national championships. One with Arkansas 77, 88, of course, and 93. Ryan Day, okay, you can make an argument if they would have had Marvin Harrison, they would have won the game against Georgia. But even so, like, he wasn't like injured in the Notre Dame Ohio State game or that Georgia game. So like, I don't think he's that big of a difference. So
Ryan Day is also 44 years old.
I know, but like,
he's
still,
been
like,
coaching for 4 years. You know how many people I saw on Twitter throw at me that Lou Holtz has won a national championship and Ryan Day's never won a national championship. Are you serious? Really?
I know,
and he
but
may
like,
never,
I'm still like,
he may never win a national championship. But he also may win 4. So he's 44 years old. He's been coaching for 4 years. Lou Holtz had been coaching for like 17 years when he won his first national championship.
I mean, I don't know. Lou Holtz was also coaching at smaller programs before he was at Notre Dame, and it just took him 3 years to win at Notre Dame. And then
Arkansas was a capable team of winning a national championship when he was there.
I mean, yeah, but like, they were like, I don't know. They were like I mean, I don't know that much about college football back in the day, but they were like they definitely weren't the same level as Notre Dame or Ohio State.
You could win a national championship at Arkansas because
I know,
it was done.
I know,
and really, if you really put the time sequence, see, if I'm looking at me being, well, I was younger than you are now then, but I didn't consider Minnesota to be a big job. Of course, it wasn't. But really, and when Lou Holtz was at Minnesota, they were only 25 years removed from winning a national championship.
Okay. I mean, you can look at the records before Lou got there and after Lou got there. I mean,
oh, of course. He improved every situation he went to. There's no doubt.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, maybe that's the homer in me, but like, I don't know. Just Ryan Day saying that, I don't know. It just really annoyed me. But
I get it. I get it. And I'm not sitting in either camp. I didn't take either side because if I believed that either one was right and the other one wrong, then I would have argued that. But I don't think there's a right or wrong. It's just a petty little back and forth. Or it was Lou Holtz being Lou Holtz and Ryan Day taking an exception to that is much more accurate to what it was.
Yeah, well, that's just I don't know. I was looking at it, like thinking about it right before, and then when I clicked in, I saw you talking about Notre Dame. I had to call in, but you can kick me out and bring John back in, and then I'll come back in for the O show. But yeah, I just had to get that off my chest.
Okay, Will.
All right.
We appreciate it. Have a good night. All right. Yes, a rough one for Notre Dame and its fans. And of course, we are hopefully a safe haven for all fan bases here at the Voice of College Football, including the mighty Huskers. Talking about yesteryear.
You're a safe haven for everyone?
Yes.
Has the Minnesota fans showed up yet?
We have Minnesota fans here typically. Sure.
So what's happening? What do you want to know? What's the I'll say about the Ryan Day thing. I noticed people, and I've seen people on Twitter say, why would you respond to an 86-year-old man? Because it gives you because it got talked about. Isn't that what we're all about now, is getting talked about?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what we are talked about. And the other thing is where some people in the spotlight can't win is if, especially coaches, because if they play it too unemotional, too coach speak, too straightforward. Then they get criticized for not being emotional enough, and they're not fired up, and they don't have any passion. And then they do this, and then they get criticized for the exact opposite. So
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed Ryan Day going off a little bit. I mean, that guy's got to be. I mean, put it this way, Nebraska past glory. We're trying to get our poop together. Things aren't going horrible, but you threw away a game against Minnesota, and then you had to put it up with Colorado and all that stuff. I kind of liked Ryan Day going off because it was. I don't recall him doing that before.
no,
I mean, and he did it in such a way that he knew it was going to get a lot of traffic, and I think he handled it. I think he handled it pretty well myself.
see where Ryan Day somewhat fools me is that he comes across as a very mild-mannered individual, and that was my perception of him as he took the job. But actually, he does. Like they lost a playoff game to Clemson his first year, and he basically trashed the officials and said, basically, we got ripped off. So he does have his. I think he loves his job and he hates his job at the same time, would be my guess, because he often refers to at news conferences that he has to win every game. He understands what the deal is, and he has to win every game.
Plus, I think a lot of those guys are born coaches. They're not born media people.
Yes.
And that's the part that probably sucks the soul out of them. I would advocate that people should hire PR people to do their press conferences, much like the White House. So Ari Fleischer is available. I'm sure there's some former PR secretary type people that would be perfectly good at standing up and answering any question you have, because not everybody is Deion Sanders and can just, come up with, they can't, that guy's Teflon. He just bounces off of him whenever he says something. So,
well, John, we are going to ask that you be the PR person for Matt Rule.
Yeah.
Tonight. What are your thoughts about the game that was played against Louisiana Tech Saturday?
It was kind of flat. I thought that Nebraska, you know what? I feel like a PR person for Matt Rule. I feel like I say all this stuff that nobody else can when I'm doing my Nebraska stuff. But I thought the first half was definitely very flat. The whole team came out without a lot of emotion. They didn't seem like they played with a lot of emotion. In the second half, they came out and the offense looked a lot more crisp. The defense looked like they had some more fire. And it was a mirror of the game before. And what I came up with is, under Scott Frost, they lost all their games in the end. And then Matt Rule's probably telling them, okay, we're not going to play that hard the first half, so we can play really hard in the second half and stop losing games at the end.
Well,
I don't know.
I don't think we've talked to you since the Minnesota game, and that was a carbon copy of a Scott Frost
situation. It was. They were still kind of exercising.
Yes.
As in not like, pump and iron exercising, but as in a priest and demon. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I'm not, I'm okay with where Matt Rule is. I mean, you got a lot of people that are whining about we should have hired Deion Sanders. Oh, they can turn this around in a year. Everybody's got that thing now. And I'm okay with where Matt Rule is at. In fact, I made the bold prediction the other night, Monday night, or Thursday night, that Nebraska will end up with a better record than Colorado by the end of the season.
Okay. What do you think those records are going to be?
I don't know.
Okay.
Have you seen the Big Ten West?
Oh, the Big Ten West is, again, a dumpster fire. Yes.
Oh my God. Trying to predict that is a record is like trying to predict what, if you go off your meds, what's going to happen.
Yes. The Big Ten West should just be glad that it's now going to be playing itself and not playing teams outside the conference.
You mean next year? Oh,
No,
for the rest of the season.
yes.
Yeah, for the rest of the season. That's true. I mean, the Minnesota loss to Northwestern was shocking. I have a Minnesota alum in my household, so he basically said, you know what he said? He's young. He's my youngest son. I call him the rotten son. He came down after the game and he watched it in his room because he knew he wasn't going to watch it with me. And he said, I kind of given up watching on Minnesota because he feels like PJ Fleck is never creative. He does the same thing. He gets a lead, then he sits on it, and he doesn't do anything different or creative to try to win games. And I thought that was pretty good insight on Minnesota. But, you know, and I mean, Northwestern winning I didn't think they'd win a game all year, honestly, in the Big Ten.
Most people didn't. And
Yeah.
especially a game that we all envisioned that if they were going to win a game, it was going to be against Rutgers or Purdue, and it was going to be like 13-9. But to envision that they would come back against anybody, throw for 400 yards, and come back against a team that usually plays extremely sound defense, that's a shocker.
I think Nebraska has a good shot of, you know, we're not going to beat Michigan. I've seen some people talking about how, it should be competitive, and maybe if they come in and they're not sharp. And I honestly, if our offensive line can't play any better than they have this year, I think Michigan's defensive line is going to treat them like little rag dolls, and they're going to find out where they're at. But I don't think we have much of a chance against Michigan. And then the next 4 games, I think, are just toss-ups. And then what do we got? Wisconsin. I don't think Wisconsin, I think, is in the same place Nebraska is. They're trying to figure out who they are, what they have, and what they can do with it. Their quarterback is a lot better than Nebraska's, but I think the winner of Nebraska-Wisconsin is who answers that question first. Iowa, what are you going to do with Iowa? I mean, you thought last week I would have said Iowa was going to win the West as long as Cade McNamara stays healthy. And then they go into, I mean, did you look at the stats line from Penn State, Iowa?
It's unbelievable.
The thing that is most shocking to me about that thing was time of possession. The Iowa had the ball less than a quarter. And that's just amazing.
Less
how you
than
can
a
be
quarter. Really?
Yes. It was like, I don't know, 46 minutes to 14 or something.
The play differential is astounding in that game. I think it was 98-33.
Yeah. So you kind of look at Iowa and go, okay, are you going to win the West?
Here's another stat. After the first drive, and that only consisted of like 4 or 5 plays, Iowa only had 17 yards of total offense the rest of the game.
Yeah.
They had their 2 biggest plays in the first drive.
That's just, and then who else is there? You know, Minnesota. I thought, okay, well, Minnesota probably win the West. They've already got 1 game under their belt, and then they do this weekend, and it's just, who's going to win the West? The least psychotic team is going to win the West. That's who's going to win the West. And we're going to have to figure that out as the season goes on.
Not that you respect or put any value in my predictions, but I would be mildly surprised if Nebraska beats Wisconsin. So I do think that Wisconsin is probably the best. Up until what I saw Saturday, I was teetering between Wisconsin and Iowa. I officially picked Wisconsin to win the West at the beginning of the season, but I put them in a tie with Iowa and then to win the game head to head. Now that I've seen Iowa, and I know Penn State's athletically and just great on defense, full of NFL players, but that's, you know, Iowa's reached new depths of offensive ineptitude.
They have. It's just shocking.
So yeah, whatever happens in the West doesn't surprise me to a certain extent, but I do think that Wisconsin is a cut above. That might be a poor choice of words because that would make it sound like they were excelling or something. Maybe everyone else is a cut below. And I think
go ahead.
Yeah, and again, I do, despite what we saw on Saturday night, I do still kind of trust Iowa's defense and special teams to win some key games.
I do think we figured out in Nebraska that we have a defense.
Yeah.
I know that we played some teams that aren't that great offensively. Our pass defense could do a little bit better, but I think everybody's shocked at how well the defense is playing, because during the offseason we were all like, the defensive line has no depth, and some of our defensive line guys are playing at I don't know, all conference honorable mention level. I mean, which is pretty good considering nobody would have given him any mention at all before this season. So that's good for Nebraska. Michigan's coming up. And I guess, that's going to be a big test for us to see how far we've actually gotten. And
Absolutely it is.
obviously the quarterback situation has been a big, we pretty much threw away 2 games. I don't know if we would have beaten Colorado, just because I think their offense is really dynamic.
Yeah.
I hate to be that honest and unbiased about it, but you can't just throw the game away and give it to them.
Yeah.
But
and that was, John, that was difficult for somebody like me to watch, and I had no rooting interest, but you saw Nebraska improved and playing its heart out in so many facets of the game. But when the quarterback throws the game away, like, I know that it's a coach's cliche to say when all 11 are on the same page and you need all 11. Well, you don't always need all 11. You can have a guard blow a block, but the running back, sidestep somebody in the backfield and takes off, or the quarterback releases it in time. You can have, but you can't have that guy dropping snaps.
right.
And that interception he threw to the sideline before halftime was one of the worst interceptions I've seen in a long time, in regards to staring the guy down, holding the ball too long, not throwing it far enough toward the sideline. He just did absolutely everything wrong on that play.
No, I think you started out by asking me what did I think about this last week's game.
Yes.
I think the biggest thing we found out was that Heinrich Haarberg can run. And not only can he run, but he can actually outrun, because I can kind of run.
You and
but Heinrich,
kind of.
yeah, Heinrich Haarberg can actually outrun people, and I think that was something that I found very surprising. I didn't think he was that fast, but he actually had a burst of speed. Now, I know it was Louisiana Tech, and people can poo-poo that, but I'm guessing we're going to find out against Michigan if we can run some option plays against them. And that's the only way I think we can stay with Michigan, is doing some kind of our offense is largely. If I was doing this, I would say we built an offense off of option plays and misdirection plays, because our line is not going to be able to block them straight up.
Our friend Keep Chopping is mighty happy to see you here, John.
It's been a while.
So we've got John from Corn Nation. So, folks, we want to have everyone be aware that you've got a Corn Nation option right here on YouTube. So you can just put in Corn Nation right here on YouTube. You can follow it here, or go to cornnation.com. It's on the SB Nation platform for Nebraska athletics.
Yeah, I started that in 2006, and I named it Corn Nation because it was a reminder to myself to not take this stuff so seriously.
You can't. You really can't. You just, I think there's a healthy balance, at least from my perspective, that if people weren't really into this, then we wouldn't be doing this right now. We wouldn't have people watching us discussing it. So I love the fervency, but let's also understand that there are more important things in life, and we're all just people, and those people over there, they're not the enemy. Yeah, you can kind of nudge and in a fun way treat them like the enemy, and treat them as the enemy, and that you hate them in quotes, like in a sports way. But it's all as they say, it's just a game.
Well, you get, for us, you get, why do you hate Deion Sanders? And the correct answer is because he is the coach of the Colorado Buffaloes. That's it. And you get all these people now that are coming into college football and football all over the place, with the Taylor Swifties and the Deion Sanders supporters, and they're like, they don't understand any of this stuff.
No.
And they're like, oh, you guys are terrible. Why are you doing this? And it's kind of weird. Or it's been a weird weekend anyway.
Yeah, my son told me that after the Ohio State Notre Dame game, well, it was nice to get a text from him. He's now a few states away, and that's been the first time I've been away from my kids here in the last year. So, texted me that, I wish I was watching the game with you, kind of thing. That's always nice to hear. But then he said that, he was out with his girlfriend, so he wasn't even watching football on Saturday night. But then he came home and caught the end of the Ohio State Notre Dame game that, of course, went down to the final play, and let his girlfriend know that if this was 10 years ago, that, this would have been the center of my world, and I would have been like ready to jump off a bridge and all those, references. And he said, yeah, she didn't know what to do with that. Like, she doesn't come from a sports family. She's like, what are you talking about? Are you serious? People act like that? And he's like, absolutely, they do.
Well, my kids grew up. I always tell people that, 2007 was the last of the Bill Callahan years. And my kids were young then, and they learned every word on the planet and every mix of those words and everything. So they're not shocked by anything anybody does. But I think 3 years ago, I started doing post-game reactions that people like to watch after the Nebraska games. And honestly, before I did those, I would let these things bother me for days. But what I figured out about doing the post-game reaction stuff is I get it all out of my system, and then it only bothers me for 2 days instead of 4.
Well,
especially with the stuff we've had to deal with lately.
Yes.
Well, Big Pete, battle of the 1997 national champions left team.
Yes.
Michigan's last title before that was 1948, I think.
Yes.
So I always like to give Michigan fans crap about that. I don't think I'll be giving much crap about anything this year. But and then, if we bring up 1997, you always get that you're living in the 90s thing. So I don't know. I just try to keep moving forward,
You did, I believe you came in and joined our 1997 debate.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know. We'll see what happens this weekend.
Yeah, well, the spread is like 19.5, which seems to be reasonable.
It is. Our offense is still trying to figure out what it can and can't do. We don't have much of a passing game, and that's probably going to be the biggest problem when we go up against them is, we don't have receivers that can get open. And we're going to have a harder time against Michigan because obviously they have pretty good players. And then we have quarterbacks that are, Heinrich Harburg's done better in the passing game than I expected him to. Jeff Sims likes to throw the ball to the other team, and he hasn't really had a chance to throw it to his own team lately.
Is that frowned upon?
Well, it seems to be.
Okay.
It seems to upset people when you are a guy and you say, hey, here, have the team, have the ball, and it's especially right in the end zone. He did that both against Colorado and Minnesota. So, people tend to get a little upset. But I think that's the biggest thing is Nebraska's offense is, they're going to we're going to have to run like 38 gadget plays, I think. So that's terrible to say about my own team, isn't it?
Well, I think you're a realist.
Yeah, I'm happy with the direction of the program. I just think we're going to go through a lot of, it's, let's face it, the guy before us took the thing and drove it into the ground, and the other guy, the new guy, has to not only he has to get it to ground level before he can start going up with it. So that's that.
All right, John. Well, we appreciate you being here. And again, everyone, it's John at Corn Nation. So please check out their YouTube channel right here. And then also the Corn Nation site on SB Nation.
Well, it's good to talk to you, Mark.
Thank you,
Take care
John.
of yourself.
I appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah. I'll try to do it again soon.
That
Probably
sounds
after
good. You are
Michigan when
welcome
I'm
anytime.
when I'm probably just after Michigan, and I'll be weeping still.
Whatever you can do, John, to entertain the folks is good. All right, folks, we do appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football, of course. And we have here in the last 24 hours, as we always do, provided the content we think you'll enjoy. As I search for banners, we'll just pop something up there. Yeah, you can follow me at facebook.com/VOCFB or on Instagram. I think we're a little bit more interested in bulking up the Instagram account there. Instagram at Voice of College Football. All right. So let's see. We've got across the nation, really not a big week in the Big Ten. Really nothing of consequence in the Big Ten. Penn State's got Northwestern. Michigan's got Nebraska. Ohio State's off. Wisconsin, I don't remember off the top of my head. And then maybe the next week we'll really get into some serious conference games. Elsewhere across the nation, nothing really stands out to me off the top of my head. I know that we've got Kentucky and Florida playing. We've got Arkansas, Texas A&M. We've got Alabama, Mississippi State in the SEC, Georgia, Auburn. We're going to get to all those games here at the Voice of College Football. So be looking out for those previews. And yeah, we've got our USC show coming up at 11 p.m. Eastern time. And that is with Tim Prankley and Matt Zemek. So join me, Tim, and Matt. That's on the USC channel at 11 Eastern and 8 Pacific. And again, we just released conference rankings. And we also released our top 25 that actually makes sense. Go to games all the time, or you've got your heart set on that one huge matchup, go to ticketsmarter.com to save big. TicketSmarter technology gives you the best competitive prices on the secondary market. Your purchase price is safe and guaranteed. Use promo code BIG, B-I-G, to get $10 off of any purchase of at least $100, or the promo code BIG20, BIG20, to get $20 off of any purchase of at least $300. Use the promo code as many times as you'd like. There is no limit. Get in the game with ticketsmarter.com or the TicketSmarter mobile app. Think smarter, Ticket Smarter. There it is, the fine folks at ticketsmarter.com. Again, you can look that up at ticketsmarter.com or the TicketSmarter mobile app. You get $10 off a purchase of at least $100 of whatever game you're looking for. Any game. These are the best prices on the secondary market, and $20 off a purchase of at least $300 if you use the promo code BIG20. Again, we've got USC Trojans Live. It's coming up at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And so we will see you all in just a couple hours. In the meantime, check out the videos, and we will see you soon.